We're back with more NFL coverage to get straight into it. Last Friday, the Bears would extend general manager Ryan Poles up until the 2029 season. And to be honest with you, a lot of people were confused about it. I mean, after all, the results for the Bears during the course of his tenure simply haven't been there. As this article states right here, he has a 15-36 record in 3 years, and in most other cases, that alone would be a fireable offense for most other general managers around the NFL. And if it got so bad, at some point in those 51 games, he wouldn't even make it a full 3 seasons. So, from the outside looking in, you could say that it has been nothing short of a mess in Chicago. But at the same time, that had to be expected, and that just comes with the job. I mean, the route that has been put on Chicago over the last 2 decades, and especially with his predecessor in Ryan Pace, the team was likely not going to reach the pinnacle of any success for a long time. That 2018 season with Mitchell Trubisky at the helm that saw them go 12-4 was a complete and total anomaly. Pace ruined that team, and Poles was hired in 2022 to oversee a sort of change that would last in the long term. So short-term success was always going to be a trivial thing for this organization. It would not be easy to accomplish at all. That's just not the position that they were placed in. So it's going to be hard to try to find it in that way. But in terms of building for the future and trying to gain some level of long-term success, you can't say that the Bears haven't re-upped. I mean, Poles immediately, to start out his tenure, goes out and trades away the top pick in the 2023 draft to acquire the pick next year that would get them Caleb Williams and get DJ Moore, already trying to build a solid dynamic between the quarterback and the wide receiver. Then not to mention all of the different contract extensions that he's dished out to key players on that team. With this offseason, seeing him extend Jaquan Brisker and Kyler Gordon, and then not to mention how he has tried to revamp this roster, especially this offseason. To see that the offensive line was clearly an issue. After all, Caleb Williams was sacked 68 times last year, which led the NFL. You go out and get both Joe Thuney and Jonah Jackson, while trying to fill in other spots on the roster to make them much better than they were last season. Like, the effort and the vision is clearly there for Poles, but it is truly going to come down to how they perform in the regular season. He's given himself enough of a chance, though. Like, the signs of progress are there. And when he started out his tenure, like, they were barely visible at all. He did not have much to work with whatsoever. And now to have him hire in this offseason Ben Johnson as well, who will also have his contract due in the same year, there's a chance that he can at least be there for the foreseeable future. If the success of the Bears is truly realized during Johnson's tenure, and if he continues to make smart and timely moves. So you can't really give him too much slack for that. He is certainly putting in the effort to turn this team around. And at the end of the day, compared to, again, Ryan Pace and other general managers of the past for the Bears organization, I think that's what is most important right now. Putting it all together is obviously very much needed to happen, but you have to get yourself started out in a multitude of ways, and they are incorporating a little bit of a foundation here. So something could be brewing in Chicago over the next few years, and I think that's what they're banking on by having him extended up until the end of the decade, honestly. And if he still hasn't found any decent success at all through like multiple playoff runs, maybe a deep one mixed in there, then you could probably consider him in danger of losing his job by the end of this particular extension. But as of right now, he's still got a ways to go before we even discuss anything like that. He's trending in the right direction, and the Bears want to do as best as they can to capitalize on it. So I have no problem with this whatsoever. Ndamukong Suh, the former defensive tackle for the Lions, Dolphins, Rams, Bucks, and even the Eagles for a short stretch of time, would officially retire after 13 NFL seasons. He was a free agent at the time of his retirement and had not appeared in an NFL game since 2022, where he spent 8 games playing in Philadelphia, as I just mentioned. But at the peak of his powers, Ndamukong Suh was considered a menace. I mean, right out the gate, he gets a Pro Bowl appearance, an All-Pro first-team selection in the Defensive Rookie of the Year award in year 1, after putting up a season with 10 sacks, a forced fumble, 3 pass deflections, an interception, and 66 tackles with 13 TFLs and 17 quarterback hits. And it wasn't just the numbers that he was racking up on a consistent basis, it was the impact of some of these hits too. Like, he already garnered attention from other NFL players as one of the dirtiest in the game because of just how powerful his hits were, and of course the incidents where he would go out of his way to, let's just say, affect the abilities of other players, infamously stepping on Evan Dietrich Smith, stepping on Aaron Rodgers as well. Oh, the Lions and Packers could not stand each other at that time. And Suh had a large responsibility in that, for sure. And again, there was almost nothing they could do about it, because even when he would face these suspensions and things, he would still get right back out on the field and produce at an elite rate. Like, that just came with the territory. He was just too damn good to really stop at that point. And he would eventually get 5 Pro Bowl appearances and 3 All-Pro first-team selections, along with 2 AP second-team selections as well. He did win a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, although he was on the decline in his career at that point, but still in that season had 6 sacks, 44 tackles, 9 TFLs, and 19 quarterback hits to go along with a forced fumble and also 2 pass deflections. His style of play ended up hurting him in the long run. I mean, he just did not have a lot left in the gas by the end of his NFL career. And, you know, it's not even a matter of numbers reflecting that. From the kind of energy he played with and all of the things that he used to do so well became struggles for him down the stretch of his career. So he was seen at this point as more of a locker room guy than a truly impactful player on defense. And to not get any attention from any NFL team despite being on the market for at least the last couple of seasons. I guess the writing was kind of on the wall for him. You know, he goes out as a player who had 130 TFLs, 71.5 sacks, 9 fumble recoveries, 38 pass deflections, and 5 forced fumbles, as one of the better defensive tackles in the last decade, as he was named to the Hall of Fame All-2010s team as well. Now, I'm not going to really speculate on whether or not he has produced a career that is Hall of Fame worthy. I would honestly, from my viewpoint, think that it is hard to really say anything about that right now. I mean, I guess there will be a good amount of time to speculate because he will not be eligible until 2030. So there are a number of things that could happen in between now and then when it comes to the selection process involving his class. But again, with some of the other guys that have retired earlier this year, formally, he could, if they do elect to get him in at that time, join a class that could be very loaded potentially. And the numbers from the perspective of a defensive tackle do seem to line up with that of a Hall of Fame worthy career. He has the accolades and he's got a championship to his name, so he has a pretty solid chance. It is very dependent on who else is on the ballot for that specific year, and also other guys who might have been passed up for induction in years past might get another look at that time and potentially have an upper hand over Suh in terms of getting their place in Canton. But despite all of that, he is certainly one of the best in the last decade to play his position. And that's not something that can be taken away from him at all. On Saturday, Quinshon Judkins would be involved in a situation where he was charged with misdemeanor domestic battery. He would spend a day in jail and then was released on bond. It's a very interesting situation. And when I first heard about it, I'm like, there's no way you're getting yourself wrapped up in something like this already. And as a result, nothing has changed with Judkins' contract because he still has not been formally signed to the roster yet and is the only rookie from the class to not have a contract in play right now. So something like this is bound to hold up that process even further, and honestly, for good reason. So according to this article right here, it says in the arrest report, the victim says Judkins punched her in the mouth or chin area with a closed fist in an argument upon leaving the airport. The report also states Judkins turned around while driving to strike her in the left arm and thigh. End quote. These are all allegations, of course, until proven. But again, it's like you are in this position, a young player who still has yet to have that security at all. And if that does stand to be true, you're literally playing around with your career at that point by doing some stuff like that. Now, apparently, as this report or article would state later, the woman said that she and Judkins are in a relationship and lived together between May 2024 and December 2024, but did not have a relationship from December 2024 to June 2025. So, I mean, you could ask the question at that point, like, why are they even around each other at that point if there is no working relationship between the two at the moment? Again, that is up to many other people to speculate if they so choose. I'm not going to get into that here, but, it's just something to think about. Like, there would have to be other questions as well that would delve into very personal territory. I mean, was there a reason why these two just discontinued their relationship in the first place? And did elements of that, even if they did just recently reconvene here, did elements of that prior exposure to each other creep into this situation here? There's a large possibility that this could have been the case. And also, as the article stated, it was considered a delayed battery charge because the alleged victim in this case waited a few days until she phoned it in and had Judkins get charged on this stuff. That begs another question. Like, what exactly was truly preventing her from phoning this in much earlier, pretty much immediately after something like this happened? Why are you trying to wait it out? Like, if that did happen, I guess it's not the easiest thing to report that from the standpoint of an alleged victim, but at the same time, like, that's a matter of law. Like, why withhold that? Who exactly are you trying to protect here? I can't see how that would help you. And even as this article kind of alludes to here, she believed that, due to what Judkins is on the pathway to do, she didn't want to do anything for some reason to hurt that, but then talk to family and friends and realize that something needed to be done. Like, yes, that would certainly hurt Quinshon Judkins, but if he did do these things, then you have to seek justice. You can't just let that linger on. Because let's say that Judkins was in fact guilty of doing these things. What in that case would stop him from doing that to you again if you don't report it? And even if you do and you still happen to be connected to him, there have been other cases involving domestic violence and things like that where it gets reported and then the situation escalates even further into something much worse. Now, again, I can't say that something like that would happen here, but there are a lot of places that this thing could go. So again, you can understand why the Browns are just like holding on for a second. And with an update that came in recently as well, it does not look the best for Quinshon Judkins, even though he did get released from jail, because a judge recently would find probable cause relating to these charges, meaning that these officials in Broward County where this all took place, they believe that they have a good amount of evidence to suggest that he did, in fact, commit these crimes. Now, again, people can scream that, and there can still be situations where a potential suspect isn't found guilty of anything at all. But it just shines an even greater light on the overall situation. So, if that does stand to be the case, man, like, it's just unfortunate that you have players getting themselves in these spots where they can change entire lives around them and still, you know, I mean, again, people aren't perfect, but like, damn, you're not even a few months into being drafted and you're already getting yourself wrapped up in some pretty controversial stuff. Again, as an update comes in, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but up until then, there's no true information on the verdict here. Former Cardinals left tackle Sharpe would pass away at the age of 65 on Sunday. He had been a left tackle there across multiple iterations of the Cardinals. They were in St. Louis for a time and then moved to Arizona later on in his tenure. Spent 13 NFL seasons there and made 3 straight Pro Bowls while being a second-team All-Pro selection in multiple years, as an article from NFL.com states. And apparently as well, the information surrounding his passing would be confirmed through his family, and his wife also posted about the development on social media, just asking for people to send prayers and giving them a little bit of information about who he was generally. So, yet another situation where you have a player of the past, having a solid career, just doing some of the basic things outside of football that certainly benefited a lot of other people, whether it be family or friends. And ultimately, he ends up passing away, unfortunately. It's just an unfortunate situation all around. But again, there is certainly a lot to celebrate about his life as well. As you have to say, in most cases, it goes far outside of football, even if he was a well-accomplished player. To have those moments on the outside of things can be everything to a player. And so, from that standpoint, may he rest in peace and obviously get the due respect that he should have already had to this point. Jauan Jennings is trying to put the 49ers in a pretty testy situation because he is asking for a contract extension, and if he doesn't get it, he's threatening to pursue a trade. It is not a terrible idea for Jauan Jennings to call a shot. I mean, let's be honest. With the departure of Deebo Samuel Sr. and with Brandon Ayuk and his status in San Francisco still being in limbo due to the number of trade rumors he's been involved in and everything like that, you could make the argument that Jauan Jennings would emerge in just a short amount of time as one of their most important pieces on the team. And last season, even though he is now 28 years old, so he's one of the older wide receivers in this market, he did put up his best year with 77 receptions for 975 yards and 6 TDs. And was by far, when he played, their most consistent wide receiver. Deebo Samuel Sr. had a down season. Brandon Ayuk was injured, and Ricky Pearsall had to come back from some of the worst odds imaginable with getting shot in the preseason. Missed some time in the year, and then put together a few solid games, but still had those moments where he clearly displayed that he was a rookie. So through and through, Jauan Jennings was one of their more consistent targets outside of George Kittle. And obviously, Christian McCaffrey was just not there either. So from that standpoint, if you're the 49ers, with him contributing in that way for you when all else, for the most part, failed, you'd want to do everything in your power to keep him, I would imagine. But here's the tricky thing about that. They are going to have to figure out what his true market is. Because Jennings, honestly, last year played like he was a true number 2 wide receiver. But the 49ers have had to move around so much money, and they've had to reconstruct a few of their more expensive contracts on the team at this point. So, over the course of this offseason, they filled up some of their positions with core talent, but did suffer a heavy pair of losses by losing Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga earlier in the season. They got some good pieces back outside of Jason Pinnock, but when considering what this could look like for Jauan Jennings, do they really believe in their heart of hearts that Jauan Jennings is worth number 2 receiver money? Because though those guys are not the highest paid in the league, at the same time, they're getting a good amount of money, upwards of $20 million a year. Even Jalen Waddle is getting paid a pretty good amount of money, and he's in like the top 10 of wide receiver contracts, if I'm not mistaken, despite being the complimentary piece to Tyreek Hill. When you're looking at this from the 49ers viewpoint, yeah, he had one season of doing this. And I guess you could say the 24 Super Bowl he had against the Chiefs as well was a pretty solid display of what he's capable of. But at the same time, he hasn't had a season comparable to that at all. So you could give him that kind of money and have it potentially look like an overpay. He has never contributed like this before last season. So why, after just 1 year, should we decide as the front office to give you a long-term deal that makes you one of the highest paid wide receivers in the league? Like, it might come down to a pretty ugly situation where it gets even likelier on the daily that Jauan Jennings gets traded. Because I'm not going to lie, I just do not see them willing to give him a contract that commands upwards of $20 million, maybe even high $20 million levels of money to secure him for the next few seasons. They may take their chances elsewhere with some of the younger wide receiver talent that they've brought in. I honestly, again, I couldn't blame them if they did. Ricky Pearsall does show flashes and should only progress in year 2. But it does need some bolstering, and that's where they may have to be willing to play a little bit of ball. Because all of their other younger wide receivers are just very unknown right now. Like Jacob Cowing did have a solid career at Arizona, but he's unproven right now. Danny Gray is more of a special teams guy. So you don't really have a lot of consistent wide receivers in that locker room. And you might have to go over the top in terms of keeping Jennings just to match up against some of the other wide receiver talent on these different teams in the NFL. That's the scary part about it for the 49ers. But, hey, to see how things go from here will be pretty fun. Again, though, from my perspective, they are probably going to opt to trade him. I'll pair both of these up since they both deal with the Jets. First, earlier in this week, Garrett Wilson would sign a 4-year, $130 million deal, making him one of the highest paid wide receivers in the league. You know, we were clamoring the entire offseason for this man to get the money he deserved, and he fucking got it. And I have no complaint about it whatsoever. I mean, he had his most productive year in terms of touchdowns with 7. And in every single year of his career, he has reached the 1,000 yard mark. I mean, hey, you know, in a Jets organization that has been pretty dysfunctional over the last few years, he's been one of their more consistent pieces. And to capitalize on that, the Jets are certainly making the right play here. I guess the only thing that you could say about it is that at this point, with him going on 25 years old in just a matter of 5 days from now, you want to see him elevate his production to reach higher marks than just 1,100 yards. But at the same time, in every single year of its Jets tenure, he has had to deal with sharing the touches that a typical wide receiver would get with other top-end talent, most recently Davante Adams. Without having that true number 2 wide receiver, or true, I guess, like, name brand player at that position, he should be getting a lot more looks that could in turn allow him to produce way more than he ever has. And that's a scary sight, because even with that being the case, some of the plays that he has been able to make on the fly, despite this, they're just unmatched. And that's what you want out of a truly elite wide receiver. Like, the numbers aren't always going to do him justice. There have been multiple situations over the years where he's just put the team on his back and taken over ball games on his own. And opportunity is going to play a factor in it, and also necessity. We'll have to see him assume that role more often than not until the rest of their wide receiver talent comes along, because they don't have a lot of bankable names in that core. I'm not going to lie to you. But I think that Garrett Wilson can truly get it done. He has proven that in spurts. So he could certainly parlay that into being even more effective than he already is. As for Sauce Gardner, last year was obviously a down season for him, but it's poetic in that he got a 4-year, $120.4 million contract extension, making the 2 draft classmates and former Rookie of the Year award winners in the same year, in the same season, secure long-term deals with this team. It was not the best season for Sauce Gardner. His effectiveness kind of dropped at every level, but it still can't be denied that he is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. Like, to open up his career by getting back-to-back Pro Bowl appearances and All-Pro first-team selections while winning the Defensive Rookie of the Year award, as I mentioned. One thing I can tell you right now is that if you're looking at stats and you're looking at how many interceptions he racked up, you're not going to be in for much of a treat. He does not rack up a lot of interceptions, and honestly, that's because he simply hasn't had to. The opportunity isn't there because when he's at his best, he is a truly shutdown corner. You do not see teams trying to test Sauce Gardner at all. And I mean, honestly, they did try in 2022 where he led the NFL in pass deflections with 20. He's had 11 and 9 in the past couple of seasons. And for the first 2 seasons of his career, he'd been a sure tackler. That did change in 2024. I mean, even though his tackles dropped off by a total of 8, the way that he ended up missing a bevy of other tackles just looked bad from the optical lens. Flat out. And I guess they were questioning his technique in doing so. So that is certainly going to have to be improved. But when it comes to pass coverage, like, again, that's just not a player that you want to attack. Any wide receiver lined up against him for the better part of these last 2 seasons has been X'd out completely. That is what Sauce Gardner can do for you. And yet still, this season presents an even greater challenge for him, as he now enters a season where he will be 25. Because, let's face it, you had to deal with either Sauce Gardner on one side, which you didn't want to do, but you also had a good complementary piece in DJ Reed Jr. holding down the fort as one of the best number 2 corners in the league, and I would certainly know that, having him come over from Seattle and contribute in that way for that team. No question about it. But at the same time, with DJ Reed Jr. now in Detroit, I just don't see another cornerback on this team being able to assume that role very well immediately. So it's going to put a little more of a target on the team's back as a whole. I mean, let's be honest, those other wide receivers will certainly be eaten good if they're not covered by Sauce Gardner, because those other cornerbacks are going to get tested into oblivion. But at the same time, there's going to be even more pressure on Sauce Gardner in those moments to hold his assignment, as well as, in some cases, break out of his focus and try to string along other players who might mess up their own assignments from time to time. And as a single cornerback, it's a huge responsibility to have to take on. So that's really going to test just how great Sauce Gardner could be. And if he does happen to make the most of that, he is worth every dollar of that contract. But it will be a tough hill to climb. Teddy Bridgewater would be suspended from coaching at his former high school in Miami Northwestern in Florida because apparently the expenses he paid out of pocket for the team were against high school regulation in the state of Florida. It's a very interesting situation. Okay, according to this portion of this article from Bleacher Report, it says that FHSAA rules address transportation in the context of student eligibility and potential violations of impermissible benefits. Williams wrote in a text message. Specifically, a coach cannot provide free or reduced cost transportation to a student, nor can they purchase anything for a student. No comment other than the policy. End quote. It's crazy. Because as this article details, along with a litany of other ones, Teddy Bridgewater has done nothing but try to lift up his former high school. I mean, apparently he was taking on coaching duties in 2018 and 2019, according to a post of his, even when he wasn't hired as a formal head coach, and went out of his way in those moments to support the students in the best way that he could. That school in particular had been searching for a championship at the high school level for quite some time, and comes in last year as a volunteer still without having the formal designation of a head coach, and leads them to a state championship. And it wasn't without going through things that no head coach should truly have to experience whatsoever, and he did not have to at all. He is very well off in his own standing. He didn't have to go out of his way to do any single thing he did for this team, and yet he chose to do it. That same post mentioned that he self-reported all of these payments to the school board, and also detailed just how much he was spending. He apparently, according to his post, spent $700 per week on Uber fares, spent $14,000 on a football camp, spent $2,200 on food, and $9,500 for clothing, along with other week-to-week payments for pregame meals for the members of the team, and other accommodations just to ensure that the team could perform to their best ability come time for the regular season and the playoffs. I mean, there was something else where he stated that he had to spend $300 per week just to make sure that all of the lines on the field were painted properly, because those were not in the best condition at all. And to an extent, I do get the law. It's like it's kind of like it was in the days where NIL just was shunned, right? Like, you don't want to have these people coming in and giving these teams advantages over other competitors like that. So where it just makes the entire landscape unfair. I get it from that standpoint. But at the same time, Bridgewater is just trying to support his team in the best way possible, because honestly, no one else is doing this whatsoever. Like, if you're going to ban the coaches and officials of the team from doing that, then you, as an association, should be making sure that you chip in enough funds to ensure that all of these different high schools are getting the support that they need. And when you're not doing that as a body in the government, of course you're going to have players struggling to get to and from practice. Of course you're going to have players struggling to get the proper nutrition they would need to sustain their physical condition and overall health during games and outside of football. This quote says right here that he was trying to have a fundraiser for a foundation just to ensure that these kids would be supported and that he would not have to continue operating in that way. That he could get the proper help that he would need as a head coach rather than having to consistently take out of his own pocket and do these things. Like, it's like, come on, man. Like, all of these things are pretty solid in nature. I don't see anything wrong with that. And I don't see how they give the team an advantage at all. If anything, it's trying to make sure that they have the same resources afforded to them as a typical high school should already. I mean, it's a stark contrast, but think about how IMG Academy in Florida is, because that's honestly the greatest, I guess, comparison. They're both in the state of Florida, and you see how well off they consistently are, not to mention the amount of talent that IMG produces on a year-to-year basis. They would never have this kind of problem. And their funding tends to be private. I don't think they get support from the public either. But you have other private entities chipping in contributions. And no one bats an eye at that because they're that good of a program. So what's truly the issue with Teddy Bridgewater being able to do that for his alma mater when he doesn't really have to at all? I don't know how they can do that. It does not make sense. From my perspective, it just doesn't. Like, that just sucks. Even with all of this, even with the way the board of the school was trying to do him, he still states in his post that he doesn't plan on going anywhere in hopes that this situation can get resolved so he can get back to helping these players become the best versions of themselves as athletes and as young men. That is a those are very redeemable things. And he's getting punished for it. That's just so bad. Come on, man, that doesn't make any sense at all, bro. But, man, oh man. All right. The Commanders will be retiring former wide receiver Art Monks' jersey number this season. Now, in terms of the specific game in which that'll happen, I guess that remains to be seen. But, all things considered, Monk, over his 16-year career, was one of the better, and I guess if you ask some people, the best wide receiver in Commanders/Redskins history, notching three Pro Bowls and an All-Pro first-team selection in 1984, where he had 106 receptions for 1,372 yards and 7 touchdowns. He would have 5 such seasons with over 1,000 yards en route to a career which saw him get 12,721 yards nearly 70 touchdowns, and 940 catches. He is a Hall of Famer at this point already and was a member of the Hall of Fame All-1980s team. So it was inevitable that he was going to get something like this done for him. Although you could argue that this probably could have happened while Dan Snyder was there, and for obvious reasons, I don't think he worried about that. Of course he didn't. But again, this is just a great showcase of how good it is to have new ownership in that building. Because now these players of the past can finally get the recognition they deserve, unlike the shit that Daniel Snyder tried to pull off in his final years there. I'm still not over how they tried to do that memorial thing for Sean Taylor, and they called that shit a proper celebration of his career and a proper way to honor him. Like, no. Fuck that. Go big or go home. That's what they're doing with Art Monk. And you gotta respect it. Even though at the tail end of his career, he did spend a year with the Eagles. I don't know how many people will be a fan of that, but at the same time, he didn't do much with them at that point. Not a lot of damage at all. So I think they forgive him for that all these years later. But hey, a pretty solid way to give him his proper respect. The Chiefs would sign guard Trey Smith to a 4-year, $92 million contract extension, as he was on the verge of getting franchise tagged if they didn't come to terms on a contract extension on that particular day. Before, I guess, 4 p.m. I guess that's what the deadline typically is. And in already losing Joe Thuney this season, I mean, I guess with him being on the older end, maybe the Chiefs were okay with it to an extent. But they could not afford to lose Trey Smith, who, as even with him being young, is already one of the best left guards in the league, and has certainly held his weight getting proper recognition for his contributions on the team. He has garnered a Pro Bowl appearance just last season at the age of 25 and did win a Super Bowl with them. Well, won multiple Super Bowls with them, of course, at this point. Like, and he's doing all of this while playing a great percentage of the snaps in these games. Also, he has been pretty solid at keeping penalties to a minimum over the course of his entire career. So to lock him up for the long term in an offseason that has seen you go through some tough losses has to be a pretty good feeling if you are a Chiefs fan. To know that at least for the next few years, you're going to have him protecting Patrick Mahomes for a little more time. Like, that's gotta be pretty good to see from their perspective. Bills rookie Landon Jackson will be placed on the PUP list with a knee injury. So hopefully he can recover from that. Obviously, when I covered him during the draft, he has a lot of potential. With some of the measurables and intangibles he has put together throughout his entire process. Like, there's just no question about it. And you want to see him be able to make the most out of his rookie season in that. Depending on how severe it is, it could limit his availability, but, you know, we don't know. So, hopefully he can recover from that. Jimmy Graham would get up to something pretty fucking cool. According to this article, he has been a very busy individual. over the previous 10 days leading up to this report, he and a team of former military staffers, SEAL members, etc., rode 584 nautical miles throughout the Arctic Ocean. This excursion, I should say, would see them raise $1 million, one for every single meter they travel. And it also allowed them to set a world record. Like, that is just, it's crazy to think about. Like, we've known Jimmy Graham for years just dominating defenses as a tight end, but this is a great testament to his endurance along with his leadership. Like they said during this article, he was the leader of this expedition, along with Navy SEAL members and a couple of rowers. They came from Norway, started there on July 4th, according to this quote, and reached the establishment of Svalbard on July 14th. They had reached, at that point, the northernmost town of the planet. So you can imagine just how rough it was when it comes to the conditions up there. But they made it through. And again, over the course of that, set a record and raised money for a good cause. Like, that is just, again, you know, even when it comes to him doing all that work in the NFL, for him to take all that time out, even in post-retirement, and will yourself to go through something like that speaks volumes. Like, that is just major. You gotta give him major props for that. I mean, like, I'm still, even after looking at that, I'm just lost for words. Like, that is amazing stuff. It just shows you the amount of other things that you could be doing. Like, even if you're not an expert in anything like that, that still shouldn't stop you from trying to accomplish pretty much anything you put your mind to out there. I mean, damn. The Bengals would add both Dave Lapham and Lemar Parrish to their Ring of Honor this year. I'm not too familiar with either of them, to be honest, but again, it is always great to see former players get the respect that they deserve. Lapham is a former offensive lineman who put together 10 seasons for them between 1974 and 1983. And Lemar Parrish is a former player who was there for 12 seasons from 1970 to 1982. And he was actually regarded as one of the best cornerbacks of his time, especially for that team, logging 8 Pro Bowl selections and 2 All-Pro selections with 1 first-team All-Pro. Across 13 years, he had 47 interceptions and 4 pick sixes to go along with 13 fumble recoveries and 3 touchdowns on fumble recoveries as well. Some of the other stats, like pass deflections, were not tracked at this time. But you can imagine that he probably racked up a good number during that time as well. And hey, man, you know, that is definitely a good way, again, to honor those guys. Both of them are currently still living as well, so they're going to be able to see their names get placed up in this banner. Like, that is just going to be a pretty cool moment when that happens. The Chiefs would cut wide receiver Justyn Ross. It felt like that was inevitable, especially with them acquiring all this different wide receiver talent over the past few years. Even recently drafting Jalen Royals from Utah State in the draft. Opportunities from Justyn Ross were just wearing thinner and thinner by the season. So I could imagine that something like this is on the horizon for him. You hope that he can find success elsewhere. Maybe he takes his talents to the XFL, or, well, UFL, I should say at this point. But you've got to try to, like, run it back if you're him. I don't feel like you'd want your career to end that way. So there's a good chance that, if he takes that route, balls out, he might find a second opportunity for himself. But I don't know. The Commanders would sign Von Miller to a 1-year deal yesterday. It is a move that should help them a little bit, especially with them losing Jonathan Allen this season. And given what Von Miller is capable of, he could still, for at least the next season, provide them with a little bit of a pass rushing boost. But outside of that, it just adds to what has been a pretty obscure time for Von Miller over the course of the last 3 seasons or so. And I could honestly envision this being his very last NFL season. Ever since that last half season in Los Angeles, which saw him win a Super Bowl with the team, he has not been what he once was. And again, a lot of that is due to age. That can also be attributed to off-the-field issues in some of the weirdest ways imaginable. But the production has not even remotely matched what he was once doing in Denver during the earliest parts of his career. Even with that being said, he is still currently the active leader in sacks with 129.5 so far. So, at times in the season, he'll probably add to it. His talent is still just pure. So, once he gets in that mode, he'll be able to get his. But a lot of the physical traits that come with being such a dominant edge rusher are going to elude him and fade out. And you're going to see bits of that in this season. There are going to be snaps where he doesn't have that same burst of speed or show of power at all. He will certainly struggle to get past a few tackles. And again, that could be because of his own ability, but also just how great some of these left tackles and right tackles are in the current landscape of the league. So, if there's anyone out there expecting Von Miller to go out there and kill it in Washington, don't. This is a stage of his career where he's going to be a serviceable role player more than anything else. And yes, that is a far cry from him being the X factor of his past defenses. A far, far contrast from that. But that is just how things have progressed for him over the years. And I believe strongly that Father Time will catch up with him at some point in the season. I don't think it's going to be a matter of injuries, but he's just not going to have that quick first step anymore. He's not going to be able to pull off some of the same moves he used to with as much fervor as he once did. So this could be the final stand for him. But it should help the Commanders instantly, and that's what they're banking on. Not to mention that I believe the Commanders have got some younger up-and-coming talent at the edge position on their team. So, again, Von Miller, for players that are trying to get roster spots in the future at that position, he will certainly be a great mentor to those people if he is so willing. I have no question about that. But in terms of production on the field, he'll get some because he is still got too much talent to just not. But it will dwindle over the course of the year. Though if, again, given how their season ended last year, if there is a chance that Von Miller can elevate his game in the playoffs like he did en route to that 2021 championship run, or even better for them if he was to somehow travel back in time and recapture some of that magic that he had en route to their win in Super Bowl 50. That could end up paying dividends for the Commanders in that situation, but that is highly unlikely. Earlier today, former Eagles and Texans linebacker Bryan Braman would pass away from cancer at the age of 38. According to this article, he was dealing with a rare and aggressive form of it that he was diagnosed with back in February, and it was truly affecting his ability to function to the point where even his agent earlier in the month, prior to Independence Day, stated that he was in the fight of his life. And it's always unfortunate when you have former players dealing with conditions like this, and it gets even murkier when you think about the lengths to which he had to go to just to try to succeed in this battle. Apparently, the articles that I've seen here detail something about a GoFundMe page that was started up by his friend. And other players, former teammates of his, and others would contribute to it. They mention Dwayne Brown, Brian Cushing, J.J. Watt, Chris Long, Russell Douglas, Brent Selleck, and Emmanuel Acho. Here is just a few players who contributed donations here, some of which were a part of the Super Bowl 52 winning team, in which that game was his final one in the NFL. But obviously, this battle is a much more serious one. Watt apparently contributed $10,000, and the page raised nearly $90,000. But the slight mention of having a GoFundMe page in a situation like this has definitely gotten some people riled up about the way the NFL is handling or failing to confront the situation at all. Because honestly, I am on the side of that. You know, if you have him dealing with something like this, there has to be a way for the NFL to intervene, even though when it comes to cancer, that's always tough. But we've seen these situations in the past where the NFL has come under fire when the NFL is, well, a former NFL player, I should say, is dealing with some sort of condition, or they end up doing something outside of the field that serves of extreme detriment to not just them, but others, and it ends up tying back into something like CTE or another condition from an injury that they suffered on the field of play. And in those situations, that's where the NFL especially fucks up. Because at that point, what you're essentially doing is chewing them up and spitting them out, getting all of the contributions and elite level play from them while they are in the league. Then when they have to leave or are forced to hang it up early for one reason or another, they're just not your problem anymore. Up until it has to deal with anything involving money, then they do as best as they can to, play the PR game and make it to where they're aware of the issue and doing everything they can to solve it. Now, in Braman's case, cancer is not necessarily something that you could get when it comes to playing in the league. There is no correlation between him suffering a number of the potential hits he had and getting cancer. That just recently happened. So I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is that when you have a former NFL player putting in his time with the league and doing everything in his power to not only ensure that he remains a relevant player in the league, but also inadvertently boost your profit, you at least owe it to that player to be there in some fashion in moments when they're dealing with these struggles. The talks of a potential pension for former NFL players have been in the works for years amongst detractors of the way they handle these different situations across multiple lenses. And honestly, that could be a good idea. But again, it's really comes down to how they would distribute this potential pension. Because known or unknown, there are probably tons of NFL players out there confronting their own personal issues and own injuries as a direct result of their on-the-field play. So to track every single one of those instances is going to be hard. Still, I don't think people would bat an eye if you at least show some effort, show some genuine involvement in this. You seem to be staying as far away from this situation as possible. And again, you wanted everything to do with these players when they were in perfect shape, in perfect condition, and in the perfect mindset, I should say, to ensure that you were putting out the best product possible on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis when it came to revenue. So I just, to see that they're going through these real life human experiences now and you are nowhere to be found, that's just not a good thing. It isn't. And you can't expect people to act like it is either. Like, come on now. But obviously, all the condolences to his family. His surviving children were 8 and 11 years old, respectively. And now they have to go through the rest of their childhood without their parent, or at least one of their parents. That's certainly a rough thing to confront in their situation. Like, I could not even imagine being in their shoes and having to hear that news from the mother, I believe. Like, that is just, man, it is. Oh, boy. My goodness, man. And then, most recently, as a part of some breaking news, as a result of the 2024 incident that saw Rashee Rice get in a car crash and then try to evade the scene before getting apprehended by police, he has now found an official resolution to the situation. He's not going to face suspension, although I guess the NFL, like, if they've still kept up their independent investigation of the matter, that could be in play. But as the formal resolution to the case itself, he is going to be serving the next 30 days in jail, and he is also facing 5 years probation. And to be honest, like, if you're in Rashee Rice's position, I'm not going to lie to you, you're thinking that this could be much, much worse. The fact that you're getting that short amount of jail time, even if it does look bad on your criminal record and probation, like, obviously, I'm not going to say something like, oh, that's a win, but it felt like you got off a little easy. So I'm just going to make that very clear. And, you know, obviously, you would hope that between the combination of jail time and probation, I would assume just not, or, well, when it comes to the probation, he might still be able to operate a vehicle, but obviously there's going to have to be supervision on him at all times. He's going to have to do monthly checks and things like that. He's going to have to ensure that he doesn't get violations on his vehicle at all and does not find himself in situations where he's ever speeding again, because that would obviously violate the fucking probation. But you would hope that he learns his lesson. There's no way you don't come away from something like this learning his lesson. And he's not the only player that we could hear a resolution on when it comes to a case involving reckless driving this offseason. Apparently, Jordan Addison is currently up to hear his resolution in his case as well. That also took place last year. Like, again, it's just too predictable at this point. Like, there is no reason for you to be operating cars that fucking fast, bro. And shit just has to stop, bro. Again, if those consequences cannot make you learn your lessons, I truly don't know what is. Like, do you really want to find yourself in a repeat of the Henry Ruggs situation? Like, I feel like certain people just want to trend that way. Because how are you going to see yourself getting that as a potential result and still having the slightest desire to go out and drive recklessly? It's never worth it. At least some form of justice was dished out, but you would hope, again, he actually takes it to heart. And for other situations, just does things the responsible way. Like, that can't be that much to ask for, right? But that'll do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.